I welcome you, my dear students, today to discuss with you the amendments which we think are appropriate, suitable, and are the need of the hour. We would discuss them, and I am hopeful that will give you. I am hopeful that will give you a picture about what is to be done when there is a question of reformation of the United Nations. We read about it, we hear about it, we see the politics around the question of UN reform. This is there in the news. This is there in the air. But we need to know what actually is to be done, what actually is the possibility, which is the subject of discussion today. I am Professor Iqbalur Rahman. Dear students, I teach political science here in the Department of Aligarh Muslim University. Dear students, we know that the UN is going to complete its 80 years. It continues to inspire humanity. It continues to create hopes. It continues to remain a global system serving the cause of humanity, particularly the cause of its constituents, the sovereign states. However, dear students, the ability of the United Nations to continue to fulfill its purpose potentially in a new world full of challenges requires its members states to commit to support the UN with the resources, political backing, and reforms that is most expected, most urgent, most required. Dear students, reform in any part of the United Nations would not serve any purpose. This is for sure. Either you make the reform in the United Nations Security Council, structural change at some part of the United Nations, it will not serve the purpose. The purpose, if you wish to see that the United Nations has to be a viable system, it has to be a progressive system, it has to be a system inclusive to the situations of the time which have taken place and which are emerging. So the reform has to be holistic. And I think this is a holistic issue. As I said, that the reforming the UNSC would not make the UN a vibrant system as we want it to be. Reforming is to be taken as a package deal to take up the issues at various levels like administrative reforms, programmatic reforms, financial reforms, and structural reforms. The most demanding and required reforms, dear students, are two: financial and structural reforms. Financial reform is most overlooked issue. This is not the serious issue either before the people or before the Society of States. I mean the UN members. Dear students, for any organization to function, to serve, to exist, it needs financial capital. United Nations obviously is not just any other system, not like any other organization. It is the world's largest, most expensive system, and arguably, without question, the most important one the humanity has created. Nevertheless, there is a plenty of controversy regarding how the United Nations is funded. In order to meet out its requirements, the funding from where it gets, I think you also have a picture regarding it. And the obvious picture is that states contribute. Of course, states contribute. So let us have a picture of this. All wants the United Nations to serve them, my dear students. When it comes to the question of finance, politics takes the front stage, thereby undermining the United Nations' capacity to deliver. Of all the 193 members, most want to limit their spending. Most want at the same time that the United Nations must serve them. Expectations are high. Financial commitments are low. We need to know how UN is funded. Like the UN, the United Nations budget is very complex, dear students. The current funding system relies fully on mandatory and voluntary contributions from member states based on their GDP and other factors. It is funded in two ways: through mandatory payments and through voluntary contributions. Each UN members, all the 193 members, are required to pay a percentage of both the UN's regular operating budget and peacekeeping budget. Members also finance many of the UN's more than 30 affiliated specialized agencies, program and funds. In addition to the compulsory contributions, member states may choose to voluntarily provide more finances. Some funds and programs are supported solely through such optional payments like the World Food Program. The budgetary provision in the Charter of the United Nations provide that the General Assembly, the UN General Assembly, has overall responsibility for budget and finance. Article 17 of the UN Charter deals with it. It says that the General Assembly shall consider and approve the budget of the organization, the expenses of the organization shall be borne by the members as apportioned by the General Assembly. The General Assembly shall consider and approve any financial and budgetary arrangements with the specialized agencies referred in Article 57 and shall examine the administrative budgets of such specialized agencies with a view to making recommendations to the agencies concerned. Dear student, it is the fifth committee, the committee of the General Assembly, which is responsible for administrative and budgetary matters. It is through this committee that the General Assembly carries out the budgetary role assigned to it under Article 70. Dear student, the question sometimes comes that what if any member does not pay or is not in a position to pay? What would be the outcome? What charter provides for this kind of the situation? The Article 19 deals with this kind of the situation. It says that a member of the United Nations which is in arrears in the payment of its financial contributions to the organization shall have no vote in the General Assembly if the amount of its arrears equals or exceeds the amount of the contributions due from it for the preceding 2 full years. The General Assembly may nevertheless permit such a member to vote if it is satisfied that the failure to pay is due to conditions beyond the control of the member. Under this provision, under Article 19, my dear students, in 2002, about 20 UN members were barred from voting at the UN General Assembly, like Afghanistan, like Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, Uzbekistan, Haiti, and many more. The UN Secretary General Kofi Annan, if we need to understand the financial position of the United Nations, this is required here at this stage that we must know what he said in 2000 in his Millennium Report, We the People. Pointing out to the financial situation of the United Nations, the then Secretary General Kofi Annan says that when the scope of our responsibilities and the hopes invested in us are measured against our resources, we confront a sobering truth. The budget of our core functions is about 4% of the New York City's annual budget and nearly $1 billion less than the annual cost of running Tokyo's fire department. Our resources are simply not commensurate with our global task. This gives us a picture that what is the budget of the United Nations less than 4% of the New York City and 1 billion less than the Tokyo's fire department. And we can see that what kind of the expectations we have from the United Nations without budgetary allocations or with this kind of the budgetary situations. This is a serious issue, a serious concern which needs to be addressed. This narrates the fact of the human life that without the budgetary reforms, other reforms, my dear student, if undertaken, would be bound to fail. They cannot survive. There has been no shortage of proposals for change to deal with the UN financing crisis. The purpose of all the proposals on the UN financing is to provide a steady and predictable flow of resources for peacekeeping and the range of other economic and social activities. One scholar, Paul Hawken, in his book The Ecology of Commerce, makes a proposal of taxation. A tax on missiles, planes, tanks, and guns would provide the UN with its entire budget, as well as pay for all peacekeeping efforts around the world, including the resettlement of refugees and repatriations of the victims of war. This is a promising proposal. Promising proposals. But this is in the situation where the politics is involved, where there is less commitment towards serving the people around the world. This faces opposition. The problem with implementing such a radical taxation regime would be finding acceptance. More so, financing problems are not necessarily about money. Dear students, they are not only related to money. They are also about political influence. They become the political questions. The United States has opposed all proposal for independent funding sources for the United Nations. Not only this taxation regime, the involvement of the private people, the industrialists like Ted Turner, like the owner of the Microsoft, and many others, it met with a serious opposition. That the states don't want that UN should go independent. And going independent financially would mean simply that their influence in the United Nations business would weaken down. Generally, the United Nations members want to maximize their control over UN spending and prefer to donate money on a specified basis. So they make all the spending decisions on their funds. This is the situation. Just look at it, dear students. It allows them to avoid paying for activities they do not want to support, such as specific peacekeeping operations or activities that they do not want to promote So they cut down their funding. They resist that the funding they should make available to the United Nations. So as I said that this is a political question and at the same time a financial one. But politics sometimes determine the economy. Solving this problem is essential to the credibility and effectiveness of the United Nations, my dear students. Failure to solve this issue is a serious possibility with implications for the entire world community. If world community fails to reform financially the United Nations, as I said in the beginning of my lecture, that the rest of the other reforms would become useless. One proposal in this regard is to establish an unspecified fund, giving the United Nations Secretary General the ability to respond to emergencies and opportunities. This fund to be created, and it should be in the hand of the Secretary General. In order to meet out the emergencies, some member states oppose the loss of the control this would involve. Of course, this would involve. However, the idea is quite workable. This could be done, and the world community shall seriously take it up when it comes to the question of financial reform. Another proposal could be like requiring all UN resolutions from any UN body to include financing provisions. This could also be acceptable to all, that any proposal, any resolutions, they shall have a financing provision so that it should become visible at the time of the adoption of the resolution, that wherefrom the funding would be made available. In matters of finance, the role of the Secretary General according to the UN Charter is very limited. It says that the Secretary General administers its spending. It is proposed that the proposal is that the Secretary General needs actual authority over UN spending, the ability to pick programs that need support and shift money from those that are not performing to develop and strengthen the United Nations. Some members support this, others are skeptical, afraid of losing authority to the Secretary General. However, this proposal is not of the kind where it shall meet opposition from the great powers, from the 5 permanent members. Most of the funding, my dear student, of the United Nations is done by few states. This is the reality. At the top of it is the US, Japan, Germany, and few others. Larger chunk of the budget is paid by them. China, over the years, has voluntarily donated more money and resources than requested in recent years. This may be because China sees this as an opportunity to gain more influence on global stage. Some Chinese diplomat analysts see this as an opportunity to expand the influence of China at the global stage. And this is what China desires and wants. So the possibility is that the contribution from China may go up But this would not serve the purpose that which is required at the system level. The system is to be amended. The financial system of the United Nations needs to be more viable through amendments. So that kind of the change, reform is must. If we take the case of India, I bring India into discussion here, my students, just to give you a picture that India pays a much smaller percentage, about 0.737% for regular and 0.15% for peacekeeping of the budgets than many would assume based on their position on the global stage. However, as its economy rapidly develops, India needs to do more in order to substantiate and strengthen its claims for the UNSC. In many other matters, India has been contributing to the United Nations through the contribution of peacekeepers. But when it comes to the question of fund, our contribution, the contribution of India to the budget of United Nations is quite minimal. So India should, when it proposed the UNSC reform, where it wants that it should be given a permanent seat, it should, along with this idea, along with this proposal, shall move ahead to propose financial reforms in the United Nations. And dear students, deliberation on spending, reform and contributions are the most difficult issues. I'm repeating this. United Nations is facing. Solving the financial matters is essential to the credibility and effectiveness of the United Nations. Failure to solve the financial issues has implications for the entire system, for the people around the world. For any organization to function, we know that it needs financial capital. The United Nations is obviously in need of funds because the kind of the role it is carrying out, the engagements the United Nations is involved with requires funding, requires financial support. Without effective strengthening of the UN financial system, no other reform, even if made, would be plausible. So, as I said, that the reform of the United Nations must be taken as a package, not only limited to the structural reform, but the financial reform is also very important. And without addressing this, the rest of the other reforms, at whatever level they are made, will make the United Nations a dependent system, a weakened system, which would not serve the expectations of us we associate with it. For today, I close here. Thank you, dear students.